Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel, and today, as you can already guess, that we are going to make this watercolor painting, and I'm going to teach you absolutely from scratch of how to do this painting in a step-by-step process. In case if you have any questions regarding the painting, feel free to drop in a comment below and I'll try to answer all your questions. So without wasting any time, let's get started with today's tutorial. So hello everyone, getting started. The first thing we need to do is take up a big size brush, whichever the biggest size brush you're having would be the most convenient one, and take up a lot of water in your brush right now and spread the water all over the area like this. Try to spread the water as evenly as possible throughout the paper and try to give a little bit of multi-directional strokes, like maybe I'm giving some strokes like this, horizontal, and then I'm just changing the direction of the strokes like this into a vertical way so that the water gets divided equally in all of the areas of the paper. Once you are done, you can start by adding some colors. The colors you will be needing to start with is going to be any shades of red. It might be crimson, I would prefer, as well as a shade of blue. I'd prefer cobalt blue for that. I would try to mix these two colors right now. I would try to take more of this cobalt blue color, and with that I'll mix a little bit of reddish tone. It might be vermilion, it might be crimson. I would prefer crimson or vermilion the most, so I'll mix a little bit of that color. You may get a slightly different version of the color depending on what brand you're using, and you will get a little bit of purplish kind of a tone in your palette, somewhat looking like this. With this tone of color, I'm going to apply it on the wet surface of the paper. It is going to spread, no need to worry regarding that. Let the color spread like this. We are trying to make some clouds. At some cases you might use some extra amount of reddish tone that you are using, and your color might look something like this, a little bit more reddish like I'm using right now. You can make your own shape of clouds out of a picture or from your imagination, whatever you feel better. I'll just make a few little bit clouds over here near the horizon like this, maybe a little bit over here like this. All right, try to make one thing. Do not end the sky area somewhere in the middle. Try to cross over to the middle portion of the paper so that the sky takes up most of the area of the paper initially like this. So once you are done, you might use a medium sized brush while doing this technique. I'm using the Brushtro brushes, and I'm using the size 4 of the natural hair brushes of Brushtro, and I'll just put a link in the description box below in case if you want to shop these brushes. I'll also add a promo code for the same so that you can get some discounts. Okay, so I'm adding some extra depth to the clouds right now. The same color, just with a little lesser water. I'm just washing off my brush completely. I'll keep this brush aside and I'll just switch to a even more smaller size brush. I'd prefer the size 2 of Brushtro once again. With that, I'll take the normal cobalt blue color, not mixed with anything right now, and with this mixture, which is blue, in a very light way. It is cobalt blue in a very light way, you can see, transparent. With that, I'm going to apply some amount of color over here, just like this. If your paper has dried off slightly, you might use some extra water along the edges to blend it. You need to keep some white areas like I'm keeping right now, just to show the highlights in the sky, just like this. Then even on these areas slightly, you may keep some highlights like I'm keeping right now. Make sure your paper right now is moist, maybe not completely dry, maybe not very wet, but a little bit of moisture on the paper would be preferable and give you a very smooth and soft edges around the clouds while you're applying this blue color, just like this. Try to be very gentle with your brush. Do not rush the process. If you notice, I'm not filling up the white areas completely. There are a lot of white areas which represents the highlights in the sky, and there are a lot of areas which I'm covering up like this. So this is somewhat it should look like. No need to replicate my painting completely. Try to understand the technique that I've used over here and try to create some clouds of your own to begin with. But before we can move to any other techniques right now and show you the next steps of the painting, we need to wait for some time until unless this entire piece right now, the entire paper right now, gets completely dried off. So you can either use a hair dryer or just quickly wait for 5 minutes to get the area completely dried off. So I'll just wait for some time right now. I'll pause the video for a few minutes and wait for it to dry off. Okay, so now that this portion has completely dried off, what we need to do to maintain a perfect horizon line right now, because all you must be having a little bit of bleeding of the color over here in the lower half. So we will take up a masking tape like this and we will apply it along the edge somewhere over here like this. Make sure it's along the edge, just like this. Now tape it nicely. Now you have a perfect horizon line. We will take up another brush, much smaller brush stroke, but size 0 this time, and I will take up some amount of color, which is the cobalt blue color, in an extremely light way, in an extremely watery light way, and we'll try to paint some very far away mountains that can be seen over here, just like this. Take the smallest brush you are having for this kind of work and try to do the mountain range in such a way that you can show the subtle ups and downs in the range, just like this. Okay, don't give very stiff edges, it won't look very natural. If you want to make it even more natural, you can add certain little highlights or certain little depths at certain areas like this or like this. A little bit of depths would be fine, I guess. And once you are done, you can remove your masking tape. You will get a very perfect edge like this. There has been a little bit of bleeding in the colors, which I can see. That's because the paper had a little bit of moisture remaining in them, maybe. So all I need to do is just give it a nice wash like this slowly. It will get rid of the harshness, as well as I can rectify it at the end of the painting. And right now it will look like a smooth edge in the mountains, and I'll make it into a water body like this. Right now let it dry slowly, no need to hurry right now, let it be as it is. What we can do right now is we can start to paint some land on this side. So for that we'll be needing some burnt sienna colors to start with. So we can easily apply the burnt sienna color just like this over here. In watercolor painting, I have seen many people being afraid to apply water on the paper abruptly. Don't be afraid, try to experiment more and more with watercolor. The more you experiment, the more easier it will be for you to learn. You can use the mixture of blue and vermilion over here. It will give you a color somewhat like this, quite dark. I just want to get some variety over here, so I'm using various shades of color like this. Okay, then I would take up some green. Preferably I would take up the sap green color. I won't take a very dark version, I'll take a slightly watery version of sap green color right now, and I'm going to apply it just like this over here. Just observe the texture over here, the ups and downs the brush strokes. That's very important. It will give you a very natural kind of a look. Some of the areas are wet over here. Do not be bothered with them. Even if your color spreads a little bit too much, it won't be a problem. Never try to build up the composition along the center of the paper. Try to always do it along the 1/3 of the paper, like I'm doing right now, the main subjects and everything. I'll add a few more things over here like this, grasses, shrubs, bushes and everything. I can make them go a little bit more higher. It looks very low right now. Just like this. Okay. We need a very strong object in the painting, otherwise the painting is not gonna look good. So we'll just try to apply some more colors, greens over here. This time what we can do, we can mix some cobalt blue. We can mix some cobalt blue with the sap green, just to make the sap green look a lot more darker. You can see the color that I'm applying right now is also green, but a lot more darker version of green, just because I have mixed some cobalt blue, and it is going to look like this. Randomize the lines more and more so that they look very natural. In nature everything is very random, so try to make your strokes also very random so that they look like natural bushes and shrubs. Even if you wish, you can add a little bit of different kind of a color, like you can use a little bit of burnt sienna as well. And I'm trying to make a tree over here, so with the same brush, with the same color, like I'm using the sap green color right now, so with the same sap green color I'll try to make few portions, few leaves of the tree I'm trying to do right now. Just observe the strokes. The strokes play a very vital role in this kind of situations. Whenever you are making a tree, more than your choice of colors, the strokes play a much more vital role. So try to be very concerned with the strokes you're applying. Try to take inspiration and try to observe the trees around you. It is going to help you a lot. It has helped me a lot while learning, and I still observe a lot of trees. Just like this, very random. It will all going to make sense after I am done applying the branches, which I haven't done yet. Like this, small sections, small portions, maybe a little bit over here as well, just like this, maybe a little bit over here as well. Try to be random, try to do small strokes like this, try to show as if there are some small portion of the tree, small leaves and things like that. Just like that. Okay, once you are done with the leaves and everything, we need to do a lot of work over here. But before that, I'll just wash off my brush at first, and I'll take a very small size brush right now, even more smaller. This is also a brush stroke, but this is the Kolinsky series of brush strokes, a different series. And I will take up some burnt sienna to start with. For the branches, you can use any shades of brown, preferably the lighter one. Do not use the burnt umber or something. The burnt sienna kind of color tones of brown would be preferable. Okay, so I'm taking some burnt sienna color right now, and with the burnt sienna color I'm going to try to make some branches. Like this. Try to, since the branches are little stiff. So try to apply some random strokes and move them at a sharp edges. It is going to make the tree look even more natural. Try to go for thicker branches and try to go for thinner branches. Once you are done with the thicker size of brush, I would just recommend you to go for even more thinner size of brush, maybe somewhat like this, but it totally depends on what size of paper you have taken. If you are doing it on a bigger size of paper, it might work with a bigger brush as well. So this smaller brush is going to be very helpful while I'm doing the extremely thin kind of strokes like this. With a bigger brush, it might be a little difficult, or you might use a slightly bigger size of paper than what I'm using. It might be helpful as well. You can see the strokes that I'm applying right now are extremely thin. But more and more thinner strokes you can add into your painting is going to look detailed, much more detailed, like this. The paper size I'm using is A5, so you can understand that it's pretty small in size. Like this. I think I have done much of the shapes of the branches. Nothing more is needed in the branches, but I need a darker color. So for the darker color, you might use a burnt umber, or if you wish, you might mix some amount of cobalt blue with the burnt sienna. It will give you a same color just like burnt umber. I like to mix my own colors, so I'm mixing some cobalt blue with burnt sienna for the darker color. And on one side I'm adding this darker version of color. You may skip the video 2-3 minutes if you wish right now, because this finishing off with the branches, the strokes takes a little bit of time. It's the same thing, repetition, but it takes time. This kind of areas would note some darker strokes. The areas which are just below the leaves would be needing some dark kind of strokes like this. Like this. Now I'll just completely wash off my brush. I'll take up the slightly bigger size brush, but you can see it's quite small enough. And with that brush, I'm going to quickly take up the mixture of some sap green and some cobalt blue together. It's going to give me a very dark kind of mixture. With that mixture, I'll just try to add on some depth to a certain areas, because light and shadow plays a very vital role in any kind of painting, not just watercolor. So I'll try to add a little bit of depth to a certain areas like this. Mostly, if you see, I'm just adding depth to the lower halves where the shadow is much more prominent. Like this, I'm making small dot-like structures over here, small dot-like structures like this, making your painting look much more beautiful. It will look much more detailed the more smaller dots you can add, but just make sure you don't overdo the dots, otherwise it's going to look very strange. So this is how the tree is going to look like. Now we need to do some work over here in the sea, in the mountains, and also in the extreme foreground. I think your painting, these areas must be dry out now, so you can start right away. But before that, I'm not very happy with the shape of the tree. So perhaps I would add a little bit of extra leaves over here. Yeah, looks better. So I'm using the same brush right now. It's Kolinsky series brushes, and with that I'm mixing some blue and green. So you might mix some cobalt blue and sap green. I would suggest you all to mix some brown as well with the cobalt blue and sap green. It enhances the composition and the color a lot. So I'm mixing cobalt blue, sap green and burnt sienna all together to get the mixture that I'm using right now. I'm just trying to do some grass like structures over here like this. This area looks very flat to me, so I need to add some textures over here, or preferably use just the normal sap green color just for the textures like this. You can see how my style of strokes changes depending on where I'm applying the strokes. Like this. Now time for some burnt sienna. So I preferably take some burnt sienna color, mix it with some sap green. Take some burnt sienna color and mix it with some sap green to get some textures over here. This previous area would be wet right now. You can just mix the colors all together like this and switch to a slightly bigger size brush. Preferably you can use the Brushtro Zero brushes as well, or I might use this one. It's a raffle brush. If there is any confusions regarding the materials that I'm using and everything, you can surely drop me a comment, and I will also put the material list in the description box below along with the links. So but you can feel free to use any other materials as well over here, but make sure you use some watercolor papers. The paper plays a very vital role. A good quality watercolor paper with a nice cotton quantity and everything. A nice GSM would be also be preferable, otherwise the paper is going to buckle up. So right now I'm going to add some textures. You can already see me doing that, and you can use all sorts of color over here. You may use the mixture of brown, green, blue, so whatever mixture suits you. Among this at different proportions, you might use blue, green, brown, and maybe a slight tinge of vermilion too. So these are the 3-4 colors that you can mix and match at different proportions to get the texture of the land that I'm trying to do right now. But try to avoid any other colors other than this. You can see this portion is completely dry, so I can completely play around with dry strokes. Okay, so like this. The lower portion I don't want to apply a lot of colors and everything. We can keep it a little bit of random, but a slight bit of texture would be preferable. So I would just mix the 2 colors, which is cobalt blue and burnt sienna, and you'll get a very dark kind of a mixture if you mix cobalt blue and burnt sienna together. On the lower portions you can add some lines if you wish, like this, with a little bit of grass like structures. If you wish, you can add some lines like this with a little bit of dry brushing, lines like this with a little bit of dry brushing, but I'd recommend you not to go very detailed on the lower halves. Once I remove the masking tape, it is going to look all okay, as if I want to focus all my attention into this portion. I don't want to go very detailed in the lower halves of the paper, but a little bit of few lines, a little bit of few strokes, that's preferable. Not very necessary, but a little bit would be preferable. Just like this. Okay. So after we are done with this portion, all we need to do is fix this half which we messed up while doing the mountains because the paper was slightly wet. So I'll take up the cobalt blue color once again. With the cobalt blue color, I would take up a small size brush, preferably the size 0 of brush stroke that I like to use. And I'll try to mark a horizon line over here like this. Try to go very lightly with your brush. Just like this. Similarly on this side. You can see I'm being very careful with the lower half of the line being straight, otherwise it might look very strange. So be a little careful over here with this portion of the painting. Once we are done with this portion, you can easily understand that this portion is water, this portion is land, and then portion is mountains. It's a very simple watercolor painting which you would love doing, I believe. But in case if you face any kind of issues, any kind of problems in understanding any of the steps that I spoke about in this tutorial, or you have any questions regarding watercolor painting, feel free to drop me a comment. I'll try to reply back to your question if I have the answer to it. So I'm just adding some few finishing touches right now with the help of a small size brush. The color is not really important over here. What is important is the brush strokes. Try to go random. Try to make it feel as if there are some bushes and everything over here. Very randomly. I'm adding a few dots, maybe strokes and everything, just to randomize the area completely. Like this. A few strokes over here. That's it. And what we can do, we can just slowly remove all the masking tape away from the paper, just like this, and your simple watercolor painting is done. I really hope you all enjoyed the painting, and please do drop a like, comment down your views in the comment section below, and do subscribe to our channel if you loved this content and if you want to see similar art content on our channel. So bye everyone. I'll see you next week with another video on any other art topic.